This is Hannibal here for my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. Let me jump right into it. KCAL in LA is reporting that Linda McMahon is going to be nominated by President elect Donald Trump to be the Secretary of Commerce, which I've already reported, but there's some further confirmation. Vince McMahon is still involved with TKO as he owns over 9% of its total stock and over 4% of the company. And it was reported a few weeks ago that he recently had a professional breakfast meeting with TKO executive Mike Shapiro. AEW and WWE both have their last pay-per-view events of the year, or premium live events, whatever the hell you want to call them. WWE Survivor Series in November on the 30th only has 15,000 tickets out right now. The building holds 19,700. With the current quote-unquote setup they have, there's well over 2,000 tickets left available, which has to be a bit of a disappointment. AEW are going to Newark in a building that holds 17,000. They have 6,000 tickets out, which is about average for AEW. WWE announced Elimination Chamber March 1st at the Rogers Center in Toronto, which was called the Sky Dome in the past. I mean, Toronto is a bigger market than Vancouver, and it's a little less isolated than Vancouver, and they're not. If you look at it between the Vancouver pay-per-view and Toronto, there's no other Canadian events announced, so maybe they expect more people to start commuting to events. But I just don't see them packing the Sky Dome for an Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. I mean, maybe if Cena's back and The Rock is back at that point, maybe they could do it. But it's kind of like an average pay-per-view. Dave Meltzer is reporting the WWE ID program, where they're basically signing wrestlers to minimal contracts earlier on, but these contracts will prevent them from signing with AEW and other places. So it's a good idea for WWE, and getting some money is better than nothing for these wrestlers, but it's going to make it a lot more difficult for AEW to get talent. By the way, AEW in one of the big wrestling cities in less than a month is coming to St. Louis, only about 1,000 tickets out, including comps. And the interesting thing about that show on December 12th, they have no events planned past December 12th other than the pay-per-view in Tokyo in January and the Australia pay-per-view in February, which tickets aren't moving very well for either of those, according to reports. But it's strange that like the 12th is less than a month away and they have 2 TV shows a week and there's nothing further planned. Apparently they've already started this, but they're going to start taping Collision on Thursdays now instead of Saturdays. Maybe they'll be smart and start using like all the biggest stars on every show. For everyone that says the WWE is so hot right now, you can see tickets dropping. I mean, hopefully with Cena back and The Rock coming back and Netflix, it'll give it a boost. But for instance, like Raw in Everett, Washington, the second, 6,500 tickets pre-sold. Minneapolis, just over 500. December 9th, they're in Wichita, Kansas, where I'll actually be starting next week for the winter. Just over 4,000 tickets sold. Saturday night's main event, the Nassau Coliseum, over 10,000. Pretty good. Raw in Boston, just around 7,000. December 26th in Jacksonville, 3,000. December 26th in Madison Square Garden, just over 6,000. Keep in mind, last year, they were pretty much sold out for the house show there. December 27th in Pittsburgh, 3,000. December 27th, they're also going to be in Tampa, 7,000. There's a decent crowd. 28th in Orlando, 5,000. They're also in Baltimore on the 28th, 3,000. In Miami, the 29th, 3,000. Chicago, 6,000. Houston, big wrestling city, 9,000 on the 30th. Then in Detroit on the 30th, just over 3,000. So you can see why they've cut out house shows, because people they'll come to a pay-per-view. It seems like they're dropping overall for TV tapings, but the big cities, they're still doing all right. But like, stop trying to tell me it's as hot as the Attitude Era or the Hogan Era, when there would be 3 shows a day. In the Hogan Era, 2 in the Attitude Era. You wouldn't be cutting all these shows if they were doing so great. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's getting a sale. I mean, in Buffalo, they had SmackDown last week. Buffalo's a big wrestling city. They had 11,700 in a 19,200 seat arena. That's a good crowd. But I have to say, back in 2005, when I had a tryout in Buffalo before a show, they had a show with The Undertaker against Randy Orton. And it was a house show, and it looked like it was almost sold out. Like all 3 levels with no stage back in those days. So I'm just sick. I mean, they're making more money than ever, but there's more revenue streams than ever. But don't try and tell me when I'm walking around in public or working my job, which is in the public, and nobody's talking about wrestling. Don't try and tell me that it's like a mainstream thing right now. Raw in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, Monday, 8,500 and a 12,000 seat arena. Mike Bailey, who's wrestled for Great North Wrestling, good guy. He's left TNA. He's expected to start in AEW. He's got a lot of friends in AEW. As far as the Quebec AEW wrestlers, he'd immediately be the best Quebec AEW wrestler in AEW by far. So I don't see why they wouldn't take him, considering they got guys like Evil Uno and those 2 WWE jobbers. Bailey's a lot more talented than them, and much better person than Evil Uno, I would say, who's a complete asshole in my dealings with him. Conan has been hospitalized at this point for 26 days. He's supposedly getting out over the weekend. Wish him the best. I've done interviews with him. Gable Steveson has confirmed he's going back to the University of Minnesota next year for his final season of eligibility. It didn't work out for him too well in WWE, but I'm sure he made a lot of money. Freddie Prinze Jr. is trying to get a TV deal for some type of wrestling show, but not having any luck. He's not getting offered enough money. Joel Goodhart, who's had several interviews with Jack Kilby on here and ran TWA, Tri-State Wrestling Alliance, predecessor to AEW, is doing a reunion event at the ECW Arena, May the 3rd. Sabu, Manny Fernandez, and Barbara Goodish are all going to be on that event, the widow of Bruce Brody. I'm probably going to have something to do with that show in some capacity. I don't know if I'll be wrestling on it or not, but I will probably be at that TWA Joel Goodhart event, May the 3rd. Apparently there's about 40,000 tickets out for the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul boxing fight tonight. How much of a work will it be? I don't know. The press conference was very entertaining, but I definitely suspect that it was planned. But I see a lot of people hating on Jake Paul and stuff, and hating on this fight, especially some people within boxing. Some people give it credit. It's making boxing more entertaining. I'm just saying nobody's talking about boxing these days. So if you want to take shots of Jake Paul's boxing ability, let's look at it as Hulk Hogan. What other boxer is drawing 40,000 in the U.S. right now and having people around the world talk about boxing, whether it's a gimmick match or not? I mean, I don't think people should be hating on this fight. It doesn't. It's just like wrestling. You could be Dean Malenko and never draw a fly, or you could be Hulk Hogan. And by the way, just because you're a good fake pro wrestler doesn't actually mean. I've never heard of Dean Malenko winning any amateur championships. Never heard of Chris Benoit, for everyone that claims he's a good wrestler. What legitimate title in grappling or wrestling did Benoit ever win? He's a good fake pro wrestler. But Hogan drew so much more money. It's the entertainment business. So anyways, I wish both of those guys the best. I'm glad they're doing well. Let's ride out the weekend, Dr. Deco 86. This is my last weekend in Canada until the spring. I'm looking forward to getting out of here. Try teaming with RJ City. RJ City is employed by... One thing I will say about AEW, if you look at RJ, and I like RJ City. I met him at a TNA show. I've nothing against him. Look at RJ City subscribers. Look at Renee Paquette subscribers. I have far more subscribers than them as an interviewer. But nobody wants to give me one of those big AEW contracts for being an interviewer. But good for them. I mean, both of them seem like nice people. Sunday, Jack Kilby is interviewing Mike Cashflow from the Tulsa King. I'm also interviewing Northeast indie legend King Kalua on Sunday. I got a UFO interview tomorrow at noon. Congrats to Linda. TWA was before ECW, yes. And they're doing a show called One and Done at the ECW arena. And I will be there in some capacity. As Jack Kilby said, he will be there too. Whether I'll be wrestling on it or not, I've always wanted to wrestle in the ECW arena, so I will be open to wrestling on it. I was supposed to wrestle on a Battleground Championship Wrestling show in there a few years ago, but there was a last-minute change that I will say it was more than my fault than Battlegrounds. But I hope to probably have a match of some form on that TWA event in May. Hope everyone has a great... And also, I'm very popular in Philadelphia. It's my 6th most popular city. New York is number 1. Dallas is number 3.